Fuck it. I grind for the love of the game. Don't need a rhyme or a reason. I grind for the love of the game. P2J is back with season 2, the preseason.
Woo! Welcome back, Jamie. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. It is good.
Still flying strong, I see.
I've been flapping and weaving around some spaces. But yeah, hoops have not been in kind of my main headspace. I caught a little bit of the summer league. I saw Jabari Smith Jr.'s buzzer beater against what team were the Rockets playing?
There were so many games. That one is so forgettable. It's so hard to say. It's so hard to say what that particular one is, and there was a lot of injuries too. So, who was watching the end of that game against the Portland Trailblazers?
If you're new to the show, Natron Clean, and, I'm sure everybody listening to this first episode knows that he's a huge Blazers fan. So I'm not going to be doing any burn type material. It's a fascinating situation. We all want what's best for Nate. We want what's best for the Blazers. And I didn't intend to talk about this, but yeah, that was a crazy preseason game. Jabari Smith looks like a monster.
Yeah, I turned it off before that buzzer beater. I was watched a good chunk of that game, but I did miss that. Typically the Trailblazers had won the previous 2 preseason titles, so I was already like ready to hang the banner again. So, but three-peats aren't always going to happen, So
speaking of that, the NBA must have not liked the fact that Trendon Watford, last year's Summer League MVP, was outright cut for no reason. And again, I didn't plan to bring this up. I was a shocking cut. It's not a Blazers take, but yeah, I'm sure that didn't look great. You go from MVP of the Summer League to not having a team the next summer. So
that's one of those confusing things. I wonder if there's some sort of story that's going to come out behind the scenes a little bit. So, and I wonder if I feel like we saw a couple of those moves across the summer where teams preemptively made trades or cuts. I know Houston did one, but there was a couple of those where they planned to make cap space available for this player, and then it didn't happen. And then you're kind of like, well, why did you do that move? And I wonder if that's one of those situations. But I mean, I do have 25 more minutes on Trendon Watford. So if you want to just jump right into that, we can.
All I know is Joe Cronin's always 3 steps ahead, so we're good.
Yep.
Last question about Summer League. Do you feel like the product would be better if there were more games, or do you think they would just sit the players we want to see even earlier?
I think they have in their head that they're going to play I feel like most of the guys that we're going to watch, they're playing 2 games. That kind of seems what their program is. And I would love to get down there for Summer League. I know we've chatted on the side about maybe potentially hosting the pod next year in Vegas for the Summer League. That would be a dream. And I think just the buzz and the energy of the first couple games would be amazing. But I'll be honest, I mean, by the end of it, I was pretty checked out. I would still check the box scores on games just to see, who was popping off, who was doing things. But I'd turn it on, and then even me, like an avid hoops nut, would kind of be like a little bored by that.
I think that's fair, man. That debut for Wemby against Brandon Miller and the Charlotte Hornets, that game was unwatchable. It was just atrocious. But yeah, I think we're going to get to some Summer League stuff. What's real, what's not. Is there anything to glean as far as sleepers in a pod quickly here? But today, what we're kind of focusing on is just some early player takes, but specifically players who are benefiting from a change of scenery. And I'll reveal this to you, Nate. I think I might have told you this in our research, but this could be a player who did change teams, or a player who is going to be stepping into a different role on his former team or on the team that he remained on. So it could be an incumbent player, or it could be somebody who actually went to a new location. That's how I approached it.
I did exactly the same. I tried to focus on new scenery guys, but sometimes you can get a new scenery even in your same location. You hang a new poster above your bed. It's kind of a new scene.
Some of the players I'm going to be accusing you of being higher on are not poster worthy, but maybe you'll disagree. So basically, I want to know, some of these players, should we be panicked about their new location, or should we be partying? Now, can you tell us a little bit about the panic or party before I go ahead and jump into the first player here and we get bobbing and weaving?
Yeah, we were pretty excited to be opening up this kind of our summer series, and we're kind of planning to be releasing these kind of weekly throughout the summer, and a lot of it is just refresher over what kind of transpired over the course of the summer. Some summer league stuff, some rookies, and some looking forward ahead a little bit. And so we were thinking about where to start and where to finish, and I feel like especially this time of year, it's all these extremes. Either your team won or lost the offseason. You got an A+ or you got an F. And so this was kind of a fun, like a tongue-in-cheek take on that. It's just strictly panic or party, all hot takes coming today.
I love it. That's well explained. Let's get into it. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about this player. I'm fascinated. So my first player with a new home that Natron Clean is sure to be higher on than me come draft season is John Collins. John Collins going from the Atlanta Hawks to the Utah Jazz. So what is it that Natron Clean is going to sell himself on when that draft rolls around? First off, location services. Is there something in the water in Salt Lake? Lauri Markkanen took perhaps the most unexpected leap in both real life and fantasy last year. So can Collins, who I think we could agree is a comparable talent, can he follow suit? The second part, Nate, and then I'll let you rebuttal or tell me what you think, that I think you're going to start talking about. I can just hear you now saying, well, positive shooting regression. I mean, John Collins, his three-point shooting randomly bottomed out last year after shooting between 34 and 40% in each of his first 3 seasons. He shot under 30% for the first time in his 6-year career last year. So, what's real, what's not. It definitely was a bit of an outlier. It was kind of a weird fit with DeJounte and Trae Young just ball hogging the crap out of it. So is it going to be any different in Utah? And what say you on John Collins? Am I right? Do you think he'll be higher on him than I will?
You completely nailed this. I have John Collins as a party circled in red, must attend party. You nailed that one.
Must attend.
But before I launch into why I'm head of the party, I'm going to start with the reasons to not attend the party. And I think that almost every person that has been had stock in him the last 2 years is going to be like aggressively nodding their head during this part. I'm going to run you through his last 4 years points per game. So 4 years ago, starting with 4 years ago, 22 points to 18 points to 16 points to last year 13 points.
Ugh, what a trickle.
Okay, that's fine. He's not scoring as much. They brought on other shooters. Let's go to his rebounds per game.
Let's do that.
He's kind of maybe focusing on playing down low. 4 years ago, 7.3 boards per game to 5.5 to 6.1 to 5.4. Okay, that's not good. Okay, maybe he's becoming more efficient as he's getting more of as a veteran.
I know the answers to these test questions.
Yeah, so this is the last one here. But so field goal percentage, 58 to 56 to 53 to 51. It's pretty bad. It's pretty sad, and anybody that's had stake in it can attest to that. But here's the reasons that I am high on him. Firstly, was that gnarly finger injury. I mean, I think anybody that saw that finger injury going around, it looked terrible, and he played through that all last year. And I think that had a big impact on his shooting numbers, on that like 28% that he shot from 3 last year.
That's very fair. We don't talk about that enough with players playing through an injury and how much. I think CJ McCollum last year is a great example. Right. And it really hurts the production you get, but you really got to take it into account come next draft season.
Yeah, that's a great comp there. But so the reasons that I'm high on him is that despite all of that, he's still 25 years old, and he's 3 years removed from being, wait for it, the number 7 player per game value in all of fantasy. And I think that he is, like you alluded to, he's going to really benefit, especially young guys. I feel like you see that this change of scenery, getting away from Trae Young, is pounding the rock, getting into a system that's more, egalitarian, passing it a little bit more. I think that could really work for him. Despite that terrible season that he had last year, that he was pretty much on the waiver wire. I was surprised to see this. He was still the number 102 player by average in fantasy last year. So for that reason, I have it as a like deadlock that he's top 75 last year. And in fact, I haven't done my predictions yet, but I'm likely going to have him in my top 50.
So I'd say, having heard everything you said, and I think a lot of the things that I said, honestly, can kind of play into your favor in this take. Um, I didn't get invited to this party, but if you have a +1, I might want to go check it out. So you gotta, yeah. I mean, I'm down to come, like, but I might leave.
Yeah, let's go. I'll have the Uber swing by. We'll check it out.
Sick. Okay, right on. So, yeah, I think we nailed that one. We know each other's styles pretty well. John Collins goes to Natron Clean. Who do you got for me?
The next guy I have, and one of these giant names that changed in the offseason. And I'm thinking that maybe you're going to be a little bit higher on him than I am, but we'll see here. And that's Bradley Beal. I have him more in the panic within reason category. And the reasons for that is the last 5 years, his 3-point shooting has been under his career average. My guess is in Phoenix, he's going to be kind of asked to do a lot more spot up shooting. So his usage is going to come down a little bit, but his kind of open shots are going to come up. Last year, he averaged 1.6 threes per game, which is well outside of the top 100 makes per game. His 3-point attempts over the last 4 years have gone from 8.4 to 6 to 5 to 4.4 last year. And in that same time, he's kind of been, he's lost that Iron Man mystique a little bit. So the last 4 years, he's missed 15, 12, 42, 32 games. So for all those reasons, I know he was still the 55th ranked player in fantasy last year. I'm just nervous about this trajectory that he's on. And, depending on his ranking, I'm likely going to stay away. But what do you think about Bradley Beal in that new location?
So I don't know if I'm going to be higher on him, but you said a couple things I did want to kind of talk through. So I think that it's true that his reputation has not come around to what he's had become in Washington the last couple of years, which is a high volume, low efficiency scorer. And that's kind of bared fruit in fantasy too, when it comes to his low percentages. Yeah. Would you say the 1.6 threes? I mean, we think of this guy as a volume 3-point shooter. So I am going to kind of tease this out a little bit. So, in Washington last year, you had KP, but for the most part, he's been the go-to guy for a long time. So I am curious if he's able to actually become more of a spot up, playing off KD and Booker, and if that would free him up not only to be a little more efficient, but maybe, the injury bug won't bite as hard next year if he's not bearing all that weight on a garbage franchise, just carrying him around to 36 wins every season. So that is interesting. And I'm going to want to see what the ADP shakes out to be. I feel like to gauge if I'm going to be high or low on him depends. And I just feel like, I think he's one of those like players that people are going to be out on a little bit, the tread on the tires getting low. And so, yeah, if he's sitting there, I would say in the 6th or 7th round, I am going to get tempted. But I still want to see what they plan. What are they going to do? They're going to run Booker at point. There's been some talk of running Beal at point. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. So it's going to be a fascinating story leading up to the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is hard doing these pods so far in advance of ADPs because it's a lot of speculations. But yeah, that was just my initial hunch, and it sounds like we're about on the same page there. Actually,
probably about on the same page. But I think I might be a sniff more curious than you about how he can do in that third banana roll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who you got next? Speaking of bananas,
this isn't a Natron guy. Especially coming in to this new situation. I don't know what it is. So my second player is Tyus Jones, point guard going from Memphis to Washington. He was in that 3-team deal that sent Marcus Smart to Memphis and Porzingis to Boston. So maybe you don't know you're into him yet, but this is what I think you'll sell yourself on, because I've heard you sell yourself on this sort of thing before. Okay, so I'm calling this projected point guard volume. So I'm borrowing a term that's usually used for running backs in fantasy football. And this cross-sport comp kind of works best with point guards. So Tyus Jones seemingly is stepping into all the minutes he can handle at point guard, and Jordan Poole is going to be chucking up all the shots he wants, right? So, in theory, Tyus Jones is going to rack up all these dimes. But the reason I want to pump the brakes is like I'm just a little weary of projecting this like high assist volume for a lifelong backup on a team with every incentive to finally properly tank this year. I just don't trust what the Wizards are going to be doing on the court enough to be like, oh yeah, lock it in, like easy top 60 player, top 10 in assists. And I think people are going to start penciling that in. And so I'm just going to be, I think I'm going to be the one pumping the brakes, like, hey, like, it's we're just projecting this volume at this point. Who knows? They could ship him off to a team that's going to have him as a backup again. I mean, it's the Wizards are going to be, a shit show. And so, it's just for me, a lifelong journeyman point guard, just played on the one team, but a backup point guard. I just don't know if he's going to step into 35 minutes and just no problems. Have you given much thought to Tyus Jones? And does it seem like the kind of player that you would be like, oh, that's good value, I'll grab him in the 8th round, or I'll, $6 or whatever?
I feel like you summed it up pretty well in that I know I have not given him any consideration as far as fantasy goes, but yes, he does seem like he fits into my mold of that, like that guy that I pick up, like on a rate, like at the end of my bench, and then I want to hold on for too long because I see the benefits. I see the consistency. I see the glue elements that he brings. And he did. I mean, his numbers as when Ja was out were really good.
Solid.
He did a great job running the team. He doesn't hurt you in any areas.
You love not getting hurt.
I do. I don't know what it is. Why I got so wounded in a past life that I need these like safe guys to fall onto. But
have you considered, Nate? I got to ask you: have you considered adding assist to turnover ratio as a category in our league? Because I feel like it'd be perfect for you.
That would be pretty stellar.
Yeah,
We've done 11 cat before, but it would be fun to do one of these just like nasty lineups where we do say 19 cat or something like that, and just see like how in the weeds we can get with this.
I was invited to a league that has double doubles and triple doubles over Twitter. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it yet, but I'm like, all right, 11 cat, I'll give it a shot. Seems fun.
It's a little bonus. I feel like it's kind of I feel like if you are going to win and then you get those too, so it's probably not going to change too many matchups, but that's interesting.
So how would you rate your level of willingness to potentially party with Tyus Jones in September or October, whenever we draft?
I would say that's a party that I don't have on my calendar, but if somebody like calls me and says like, hey, we're coming to pick you up, we're going over there, then I'll be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll check it out for a little bit.
Would you make sure you grab something to drink from home just in case you got there and like it was surprisingly dry?
No, I'm gonna pregame that party. Yeah,
yeah, probably.
That's it. Yeah, that one I'm gonna I'll be hanging out for a little bit. I'm not gonna show up at that party at 8:00 either.
Okay. All right. So Tyus Jones goes to Nate as a sure, swing by and grab me. Level of party.
So sticking with the Wizards here, which is why everybody is here to hear about Wizards talk.
That's right.
I wanted to go into Kyle Kuzma, who I'm thinking you're going to be pretty high on, but we'll see here. That was my hunch.
Natron playing. Kyle Kuzma has been successfully identified as one of my players that I have on my list.
All right, there you go. This podcast is starting off pretty smooth so far.
So let's hear it. Sell me on why I've already sold myself on Kuzma.
All right. So he's coming off of a breakout season in Washington. So he's already done it. That breakout season included 21, 7, and 4, and on 2.5 threes per game on top of that. That's pretty great. He's a pretty young guy too. Those are great numbers. He all of a sudden became this awesome rebounder kind of out of nowhere too. It was like, how did this happen? The thing about that is though, and I feel like there's a longer discussion here about how much do you value rankings versus how much do you value some of these box scores or just these raw numbers, because despite all those huge numbers, he was only the 136th ranked player as far as averages go last season. Now, there's a couple holes in his game. A lot of them were that he averaged 3 turnovers per game. That's a pretty big number.
He's specific.
Yeah. So if you do punt turnovers, you get into the top 100. If you punt free throw percentage, which he's pretty bad at, then you get up there pretty high as well. So you do want to be considerate of his builds.
Yeah, no doubt.
I was kind of really what I was wondering about that was A, how did he do it? And then B, can you replicate that for next season? So how did he do it? I mean, first off, his career average is 31 minutes. He had 35 last season. And he chucked a couple more threes. He was shooting 2 more threes per game. So that was kind of the biggest thing. But I wanted to take a look at how he performed without the guys that aren't there this season. And so,
Nice.
so in 21 games without Bradley Beal, his points and rebounds were pretty much exactly the same. He averaged 1 more assist. He averaged 1 more turnover. Percentages were the same. So I think that losing Beal is not going to have an impact on his numbers at all. I think that's feel pretty comfortable in saying that. In 970 minutes without Porzingis, which is like equivalent to about 27 games.
Nice work.
It was interesting because the way that he was used was different though. And so that's one thing I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. So his usage rate with Porzingis on the bench was 31%. With him on the floor was 25%, which is so 31. I mean, that's
sizable.
That's a massive number.
That's a big jump.
And so that is something that I'm curious to see. And so and they didn't bring on another big man to kind of really compete with that. They have some young guys that they're hoping to kind of throw some minutes at. So I'm not worried about the additions of a Poole or Jones kind of taken into that. So it's funny because the longer I talk, the more I'm talking myself into Kuzma.
That's what I did
as we're like standing here. But
that's what happened with John Collins for me. I was ready to be like, oh, you loser, you're going to buy back in on John Collins. And then I went through my research and I was like, well, he has a point, even though he never told me he has this point. I know he has this point. And you did.
So I had him written down, and once again, I'm changing it the longer I talk, but I have him as this is a pretty sweet work party. Like, it's still a work party. You're not that excited about it, but they're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff. There's going to be some awesome food. So that's the category I have Ball in. But you have him nicer than a work party. You got him as a real party.
I do. Think about it, man. I have him as the parents left town. It's time to stay home and trash the house party.
Woo, this is a good party.
Exactly. So Kyle Kuzma is like a 17-year-old whose parents left for 2 weeks, and it's like, late May, and everyone's about to graduate, and like all of a sudden he goes from like, kid that can't really get a look to like, he can go to any lunch table he wants after this party. Like, so I look at the 4-year, $102 million deal they gave him. I thought it was a pretty dang good deal considering some of the contracts that are being slang out. And so it's funny you mentioned the build thing, because I did highlight and I wrote down fantasy points league people pay attention, because much like Jordan Poole, like the green light that Kuzma and Poole are going to have next year is so bright I can like barely see my screen. But just kind of outlining what I think this could look like. So last season, like you mentioned, Kuz gave you 21 points, 7.2 boards, and 3.7 dimes. I think we can looking at a 25.9 rebound, 5 assist season next year for Kyle Kuzma. So in a points league where it's every volume is king, that could slide under the radar. I'm going to be trying to get that because people don't think of Kuzma as a guy that, but honestly, he could be a top 30, 40 points league player. And then in a 9-cat league, you just want to make sure that he fits your build. Because if you're going for like field goal percentage blocks, like a lot of times I don't build those high scoring, high usage teams. But with values like Kuzma, I'm going to be more tempted to have some builds like that, because I think he's going to fly under the radar. He's still just Kyle Kuzma. He's still like the dope that wore the giant pink sweater with like his Eminem hair. But yeah, I think he'll be a value in drafts this season, and he could just go bonkers. And because they paid him, I don't think it's the same thing as with Tyus Jones. I think like he's going to be safe. They're going to want to have a case to be like, he's an all-star, he has to be. We've only won 7 games, but he's averaging 38 points a game and over the last month. Like, I can see it now. Like, they're gonna
see that as well. Yeah,
exactly. So we'll be talking about Kyle Kuzma a lot this coming season, I bet. But yeah, I would definitely put a red flag next to him depending on what kind of league you're in or build you got going.
Yeah, that's a strong. But I didn't even think about the bump for points league category. That was a really good thought there.
So speaking of no bump for a category league, I'm very excited to reveal my next player to you, Natron Clean. And so the third player I have
Please tell me it's a wizard.
the third player I have that I know you'll be higher on because I won't be sniffing them is Grant Williams.
Ah,
The power forward, small forward eligible on Yahoo player going from Boston to Dallas. Now let me tell you a little bit of what you're going to sell yourself on.
mm-hmm.
Nate's going to be telling me, listen, man, Grant Williams is going to do a little bit of everything over there in Dallas. They really committed to him. They signed him this 4-year, $53 million contract. They give
They
up
love
like
him.
a healthy amount of draft capital. Heck, dude, he could lead the NBA in minutes. He is this year's glue guy
Mm-hmm.
MVP.
Yep.
Natron, will you be leaving any draft without this man at the end of your bench?
I won't be going after him in the first round or
You
two,
don't have
but
to.
but will I
Answer the
be
question.
reaching? Will I be reaching for him 4 rounds before anybody else in our league? Yes, yes, I
Yes.
will
So this
be.
is an ultimate nail. Like, could I have nailed a more Natron Clean? Like, is there a greater discrepancy of players for us this coming season, maybe than Grant Williams?
I was so excited to see him go to Dallas. That was
It's
such a
it's a good
that was
landing
such like
spot.
a cherry, and it was right at the end of free agency. It was such a cherry on the top of that off season.
You deserved a cherry this offseason, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you, man. Yeah, he'll definitely be on some glue guys pods where we're talking about the players who hold your fantasy teams together. If you haven't heard our glue guys episodes, please go back check them out. They're really fun, and get yourself kind of prepped on the idea of the glue guy because glue guys 3.0 that's definitely coming down the pike. But yeah, Grant Williams. For what kind of part? I mean, can you even put him into a metaphor where you're partying? Are we doing that with him? Is that
I
really?
feel like I feel like it's you're talking about getting in the high volume of minutes and just kind of racking up a whole like trickle of assists across the board. I feel like he's the guy that's starting the party about 4 hours earlier than
Oh my
everybody
God.
else. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's over there with asking you if you want a shotgun, and you're like, dude, I'm just like
So
yeah,
basically, all of your main buddies, like that's like the
yeah, that's
Litke
true.
buddies special.
Yeah, maybe that's why I like him so much.
Definitely received shotgun videos through our group chat from your friends at 1 p.m.
We had to switch off of text messaging to a WhatsApp strictly so we could send shotgun videos. That's the main reason for doing that.
The videos are too grainy when you have iPhone and Android users. What are you going to do? It's a tradition.
I know, yeah, you got to do it. But yeah, no, you nailed that one. That was really good.
Okay, it feels good to have Grant Williams out of the way, Natron. So you go ahead and hit me with your next guy.
Well, I'm gonna keep going with Wizards.
Let's do it.
Just kind of dip right back in there, and this one I feel pretty confident that I'm a lot higher on than you will be, and that's Jordan Poole.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're 100% right. I left him off the list because I thought you'd cover him. Yeah, you're 100% right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty the moment that trade happened, I thought, well, okay, he's going to be pretty high on my ADPs. And kind of the reason for that is so his career points per game he's been a really steady rise throughout his entire career. This will be his 5th season that he's going into, and he's gone from 9 to 12 to 18 and a half to 20.4. He gives you a little bit of some other stuff. He gets 2.7 boards, 4.5 assists, but really the reason you're there is the 2.6 threes. He gives you a high volume of free throws and at 87%, so it really helps you there. But the reason that I'm excited about him is that is exactly how you alluded to, is that just screaming green light that he got. I look at Kyle Kuzma, who got 35 minutes a night in Washington last year. Last year, Jordan Poole averaged 29 minutes a night. So I feel like it's pretty safe to predict 34 minutes. I think that's a really conservative number. So you're looking at a minimum 12% more minutes that he's going to get, and that's a pretty significant bump. So if you do that, his averages bump up to 23, 3, and 5 with 3 threes a game. and probably about 74 turnovers per game. I don't know that one
Give or take.
exactly, but yeah, it's kind of in ballpark.
It's such a build specific. Hey man, if you're going to grab Kuzma, you might as well double dip on the Wizard high volume guys.
Yeah, I think he's a really pairable guy with a lot of players. And I think those numbers also weren't accounting for the fact that he's just entering his 5th year. So he's still a really young guy. I think you're going to see some further progression, especially because, he's a 5th year guy that's going to be playing without fear of getting punched in the face in the middle of the game.
I think that was probably a weird experience for him.
I think it was, it must have affected the play. Yeah. So for all those reasons, I think he's easily going to be a top 50 guy if you're in a punt turnovers build. So I think depending on your build, he's going to be a great guy to grab.
I do see a distinction again, same as I said about Kuzma, from my fear with Tyus Jones. And that is, even if the Wizards brass isn't totally sold on Jordan Poole as a part of their long-term plans, they have every incentive to turn him into as good of an asset as they can. And to feature him in a way that's going to make other teams go, hey, like we could use 25 points a game. And, so I think that no matter what, he's going to be a future player. He's locked in. He's not how I like to attack. So I'm going to let someone else. I'm looking forward to bidding someone up on him, actually. He's just that kind of player for me. But he's not a do not drafter. I just like, do you think Jordan Poole's good? No, doesn't matter for fantasy. No. We love his volume. But
For me, like my favorite hypothetical conversation you and I have ever gotten into was 2 years ago. We got into which player would you rather have long term, Jordan Poole, Tyler Hero, Anthony Simons, or I guess it was really those 3. And it's funny because all 3 of them are probably going to get traded this season. Mm-hmm. And I don't think any of those 3 are very good.
They're all very expendable, high volume scorers.
Yeah, very replaceable.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think they're all super 6th man that are now overpaid, but
So next up, dude, I have the guys who I think I'm going to be higher on than you. So we can kind of fly through some of these. These are change of scenery guys, if you're thinking about it in terms of fantasy. But a player I'm really excited about is Obi Toppin next year. Yeah, now an Indiana Pacer, formerly a New York Knick. I love these players that a team acquires a player and you're kind of wondering about it and you look it up and you look up the games he had against the team that acquired him. And more often than not, especially if Doc Rivers is the coach, but more often than not, that player's best games were against the team that acquired him. Same with Obi Toppin. Back-to-back years, he just went bonkers against the Pacers towards the end of the year. It was really silly season both years. And the Pacers, they're a team with a power forward spot that is just grabbing to be seized. It is screaming to be grabbed and grabbing to be seized. So I think he's been one of fantasy basketball's most underutilized players in recent years. Last 7 games of the season last year, Toppin gave you 18.6 points. And listen to these shooting splits: 57%, 44 from 3, 90 from the line in 27.8 minutes. So wow. I think he can really stroke it. He's super athletic. I think he can play within a team structure. I think the Pacers kind of run and gun style is going to be really interesting to kind of squeeze him in there. And we know he's better than Jalen Smith, who was just kind of a beanpole out there, just an inefficient 3-point shooter type. I guess his biggest threat is that rookie Jarris Wallace out of Houston.
Walker, yeah.
But their thank you. But their coach is Rick Carlisle, so I think they're going to bring along a rookie slowly. So I think in the double-digit rounds, Obi Toppin's going to be one of my favorite flyers, like round 11, 12.
Huh. That's once again, it was a guy that once that movement happened, I didn't really give it much of a thought for fantasy. But now that you say that, I'm not surprised that you're higher on him than I am. And I guess in my mind, I had penciled in like those minutes going to some combination of Walker and Brown, Bruce Brown moving over there, obviously too. And I feel like a lot of that is Obi Toppin is, and we've talked about in my previous pods, is a little bit of an eye of the beholder situation. And I think it's game by game, because you watch some games and he's skying all over the place, getting boards, doing putbacks, running hard. And then you watch other games and you kind of wonder if he has anything else to his game besides dunking. And so I I feel like maybe I've caught more of those games that I see where he's kind of highlight plays and nothing else. And but that it was, I feel like that was a really good point with I love Rick Carlisle. I think he's just absolutely a
I know you
top 3
do.
coach in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, he does not like playing rookies very much. And so yeah, that could be a really interesting thing, especially with Benedict, with that backcourt that they have between Mathurin and Halliburton. Those guys like to run, so there's going to be a lot
Yes,
of opportunity in the fast break. So I think that was a really good. I think that's a really smart call.
It's funny you mention how much the games that we have caught about these fringe players, and Obi Toppin's a fringe player we're talking about in July. I did catch the game against the Pacers last year in Madison Square Garden, and he was just stroking it. Like, he really has a nice shooting touch. Yeah, you're right. He looks like, sometimes you look at him and you're like, am I watching a 2K simulation or is this an NBA game? So he kind of does have that feel to him, but I think this is the perfect system because it's a run and gun style. It's an open offense, but it's run by Rick Carlisle. So you're going to have to, do the right things. You're going to have to prove it in practice. So I think it's the right time to see, can Obi Toppin ever be a top 75 fantasy player? I think it's in his range of outcomes. And I think if it's going to happen, this is the right opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one. I mean, I don't totally agree with it, but I
Right.
love it.
Exactly. I thought that'd be a polarizing one.
The next one I have, and I'm guessing they were both going to be a little bit lower on this guy than consensus, but we'll see. That's Marcus Smart. I don't know if you had him as a guy you were going to touch on here.
I don't, but I love him so much. I love Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I love Marcus Smart too. He's a longer player that I've always wanted the Blazers to have, and I feel like almost every fan base, if he was on your team, you would probably buy his jersey. If he's on somebody else you're playing, you hate him, and I kind of love players like that.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit of two minds here with this move over to the Memphis Bears. His rankings the last 3 years were, he finished 92, 75, 89. Those are averages. So that's those aren't the highest and not the lowest, but I think there's definitely the perks of playing for this season is that we know for a fact he is going to be the starting point guard for the first 25 games at a minimum.
Yeah, I love that. I love that baked in.
Yeah, it's huge. You're talking about, what's that, maybe 7 weeks or so of having a just dynamite point guard. And then, there's always going to be injuries elsewhere in the NBA. You have the opportunity to potentially pick up other guys. There's going to be trades, but the first season is a little bit more first part of the season is a little bit more predictable. So having a guy like that is pretty huge. The other thing I think which is a really big perk about going from where he was to where he's going, is Boston played at the 18th fastest pace last season. Right. And a lot of that was a lot of ISO ball.
Your turn, my turn stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's going to Memphis where they love to run. They were the 6th fastest team in the league last year. So he's going to be getting a handful more possessions every game, a lot more chances to rack up all kinds of stuff. I think that's a really big perk there. The thing that makes me a little hesitant is what happens after that 25 games. What happens as we kind of get into the fantasy playoffs? The one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is thinking about the spacing in Memphis. Because right now the projected starting lineup is going to be featuring 3 -2 non-shooters. I mean, you have Ja himself and Adams. It's going to get a little crowded. Marcus Smart's a 32% career shooter, although he's not afraid to shoot it. Obviously, he's not hitting it at a high clip. And so they do have the potential to get a little creative by putting in guys like Luke Kennard or Aldama or maybe somebody like Zaire Williams or Roddy, who knows? But I think that that spacing makes me a little bit nervous. And then the other fact is that he's not old, but Marcus Smart, God love him, he plays so hard, and he's racked up a lot of playoff minutes. that just because of the way that he plays, he's kind of tended to average between 15 and 20 missed games per season. And I think that's pretty predictable to kind of predict, or, kind of project. So I think I kind of, I'm not quite sure. I have him called as this is a party where everybody that's there. You know what's going to happen at this party, but
right.
you're probably still going to go.
It doesn't as much sound like a party, but it sounds like a video you watch of a party you went to a long time ago. So you know exactly what's going to happen. You're sitting on the couch and you're watching a party you once went to. You're not even physically there.
You think that'd be fun to like relive, like say your top 3 parties, like a 20-minute like highlight of say Flyin J at 24 at some place?
I think it would be as fantastic as it is cringy. I actually have a VHS. That's how old I am.
Wow.
I took a public speaking class when I was like 21, and there's a video of me, and it is like, and it's actually a video about me. It's when the Sonics were in flux and they had been purchased by Clay Bennett, and I was giving this whole rundown on what was going on and like the stuff behind the scenes, and just it was my part of trying to kind of like lobby to prevent what was about to happen from happening. So I gave a speech about it, but it's pretty cringy just to myself at that time. So it's always funny to go back and see yourself, but overall I would very much like to do that. Just depend. I just prefer not to show everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, maybe a 5-minute clip or something would be better. But yeah.
Well, to get back to Marcus Smart and not me telling a speech in 2006 about the Sonics. So what I like about Marcus Smart is in the past is like the price you pay for Marcus Smart is always what you get. Like his deficiencies, the range he's going to go in drafts. In an auction, it's always $6 to $8, sometimes 10. You're gonna 7th to 9th round in snake format, and the kind of player you're gonna get. You're right, he does get dinged up. So there's gonna be a little mystery around him for the first time, as far as like where is his ADP gonna fall? Like, are people gonna overvalue that 25 games or underestimate it? There are some spacing concerns. It's it's not that different than Boston. I mean, Bane's a great shooter. JJJ is a very good shooter for his position. So like, I just see more of a leadership role, because I think Smart is a natural leader, but like Jaylen Brown and Tatum, they always had this tendency to like, it was their team. They were the best players on the team. So there was a tug and pull between them. And I feel like someone like Ja Morant is looking for guidance. He's looking for somebody that's tough and experienced, like Marcus Smart. He's going to have the respect of that room. I think for someone like Marcus Smart, that can actually affect his play. This is a little bit of this isn't really facts based, but I feel like that fit in Memphis actually could have a positive impact on his fantasy production, because I think he's going to be so comfortable in the role he's in. And I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm not planting my flag next to it, but I have this hunch that fit in Memphis and being able to finally be a leader and somebody that the young guys look up to be like, hey, show us the way, dude. We haven't been there yet. And it's such a talented team. I think that he's a fascinating player just in general in his new location. And I'm curious where his ADP lands, but yeah, I love Marcus Smart. I'll still be tempted by him in the same range he always goes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you know exactly what you're getting from him, and that's and you're drafting him for those reasons, and you're getting him late enough that he's fitting into the roster that you've already created too. So there is that perk, rather than drafting a guy in the 3rd round and then hoping that the rest of your team can fit around it. So
exactly, no doubt. All right. Well, actually, if you don't mind, I wanted to continue talking about the Washington Wizards.
But we're going back to the Wizards again.
We have to. So this is a player I got myself really worked up about just today. Actually, he made it to this list today. Hadn't given him a lot of thought in the offseason about kind of some of the shuffling that's gone on this team. This is a player that I've always chased anytime he gets a chance. This player is Daniel Gafford. He's still a Washington Wizard. We know Beal and Porzingis are not. So I think it's time to rejoice if you're part of the Gaff gang, like I've always been. I picked up and dropped this guy more than a penny off the street. And so now I think if you're going to pick him up, it's for keeps. I just think there's no way this guy isn't going to be a value in drafts, because he's just been so under the radar, kind of a backup center, and he's so build specific, but like a center that can get you, 10 points, 10 rebounds. This guy, he's plus 68, 69% shooter. This in the blocks. I mean, he could average 2 blocks a game. So I checked in a recent industry mock, he was selected number 81. So I haven't done ranks yet, but I bet this guy is going to be in the 50-60 range for me. And I bet in your average home league, you can get him in the hundreds. So I just think when I go through and start really doing my work, pivot out of the football space and really sink into the basketball space, I'm going to find Daniel Gafford to be one of the top values and, for upcoming fantasy drafts, because I just don't think people realize how useful he can be as a full-time starting center.
I guess I love the value of these like kind of post-hype sleepers. I feel like in general that's like a really like fun category to go for. I just was looking up Daniel Gafford because I was ready to throw some shade on that, because I was like, the dude's 29 years old and he's been in the league for 17 years, but he's only 24.
He's not 29. I know. I was like,
no, yeah, he's 24 years old right
Feels
now.
Like he's older, but
I was blown away. So I feel like there's been so many years in a row that he's been hyped, whether it was Chicago or then now here in Washington. But it is hard because I feel like I've hopped on board this train and then have it like just not go anywhere in the station for so long. And Washington's been particularly good at building up a lot of these like big guys that have the role and the athleticism to do stuff, and then haven't quite been able to put it together. I think if he does put it together, I think you're right. I mean, there's the runway for it. He's got all the opportunity in the world. I'll happily bid you up in our league, but I think I think you're going to end up being higher on him than I am. But,
I know. I think I will too. He's not a player I'll be afraid to lose. I'm just really, I think of him as like this. I think of him like Mark Williams last year. As soon as he got the opportunity, he kind of was who the hype said he could be. He was a top 50 player in 9-cat because of the big guy stats. Daniel Gafford, somebody who we've seen chunks. We've seen that he can do it when given the opportunity, but it always is just, either when Porzingis was hurt or then they were playing the two together and that was kind of awkward. But just with the way the roster's shaking out and his age and the fact that he's under contract, I think that we're finally going to get a year where we see what he can do as a starting center. So I'm not going to pay top dollar. But yeah, I think that he's going to be a value as people are just going to kind of pass him by.
Yeah. Speaking of Mark Williams, did you know that after the trade deadline, Bates-Diop had a higher ranking per game than Mark Williams?
Did you know I had the decency and the respect for you to not put Diop on this list? I was like, you know what? I'm not wasting any time on our first podcast of the season talking about this joker. So I was hoping you wouldn't even bother. This isn't the blue guys.
I bothered.
Okay, fine, go.
No, that's all I had on.
Oh, that's all you have. That's really interesting. That's really good.
Just one little nugget. I figured you might bring up Mark Williams, but who I also like quite a bit too. But
I will say the Phoenix Suns did an incredible job filling out the back end of that roster. It was really impressive. The prize.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I love what they did there. I think they got a lot of under the radar. Like they did a great job getting guys to sign for the minimum. Where I thought all those guys would have gone for more like not mid-level, but at least part of the mid-level someplace else. So well, I'm down to my last guy. I don't know how many guys you have left.
I got 2 left and they're quick hitters.
Okay. Well, why don't you hit one and then I'll come back to mine and finish up.
I don't have a lot on this guy. I haven't done a lot of research, but I think I want to talk about him and I just kind of want to hear what you have to say. So this is a guy who's hasn't changed teams, but Fred VanVleet did change teams. So I don't know where I stand on Scottie Barnes actually being a real life full-time point guard. I'm not sure, but I think I'm about to pay Penny Hardaway level prices on my drafts to find out. So I just want to know what you think. I obviously it's strange. I mean, they signed Dennis Schroeder and that team seems to be in flux. It's very early. I think that, projecting the Raptors is a little mind-numbing right now. But where are you at on Scottie Barnes? I know I've been really high on him and he was a bit of a disappointment at times relative to ADP. But I'm curious kind of what he could look like in that role next year. Are you curious?
It's funny that you brought him up because I had the Raptors on my short list, but I just hadn't fleshed it out enough to kind of come up with strong opinions on it. I was going to go with Dennis Schroeder as somebody I liked significantly more than you did. But the more I kind of thought about it, and I do like Dennis Schroeder, I think he will end up somebody that's in my draftable guys.
Good guy.
But But the more I thought about it, the more I kind of was thinking, well, the reason they cleared this Fred VanVleet was to put the ball in Scottie Barnes' hand. If not, but the other reason I didn't put Dennis Schroeder on there is because I assumed Dame would take most of his minutes in Toronto. Once that trade happens, which then I'll rake it in on DraftKings. But
dude, I have the Heat. I have the Heat for a long time. $2 base 74.
Oh my gosh, that's a smart play. Yeah, well, yeah, but
$2 on it though.
I know that's the worst part of it. But yeah, no, Scottie. I also will be paying pretty high for Scottie Barnes as well. I just think he's.
Are you serious? You want to go to battle?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're with me. You've come aboard
with you on this. Yeah. Last season, I mean, I know we had some fun discussions about is Scottie Barnes actually a good fantasy player last season. I think he wasn't nearly that great of a player. I think he had a pretty big regression. But I think that's pretty normal when you look at a lot of these high profile rookies. Then the second season, teams have a book on them and kind of know how to take those things away.
Good point.
And then the third season, they're able to come back and make some adjustments and kind of add some wrinkles to their game. I think he's going to have a really big season. I think the ball is going to be in his hands to create a lot more. The question is going to be, what does the offense look like with a new coach? That is a big question mark. But no, I think surprisingly, I'm also very high on him.
That's really exciting, man. I'm so happy to hear that. Just the Raptors last year, and we were fascinated by them last year, but it was just kind of a jumbled mess, man. It was just a strange. The roster was so strangely constructed, and it's not any less strangely constructed this season. I just think it's cleared it out a little bit for Scottie Barnes to take off, and that's what I'm happy about.
Yeah. The last guy I have to talk about, and I only threw him on here mainly just to kind of get the conversation started, just because I figured it was somebody that you were going to expect me to talk about. So I am, and that's my boy Dillon Brooks.
Oh God, Dillon Brooks.
What a great contract.
Why did the Rockets? Okay.
Rockets.
Okay. I don't want to get going too much on the Rockets, but I understand culture building and paying guys when you have the money before you have to sign the second contracts and all that. And I on our chat, I was backing up the Fred VanVleet contract just for that reason. But the Dillon Brooks contract, the Villain Brooks contract, kind of sent it over the edge, because he's not the kind of guy that's going to come in and be like, oh, I'll just do 3 and D and spot up in the corner and high five. This is a kind of guy who wants to be a high usage scorer. He's going to be taking shots from their best wings. That's how Dillon Brooks rolls. Do you not agree?
Oh yeah. He's if swagger was a category in our 19 cat league that we do, he'd be a first round pick. For that
he looks like he just tried out for the WCW in 1997 and got thrown from backstage because he pissed someone off when he asked him for a cigarette.
Yeah, I love the fit in real life, if I'm being honest. I think that team needed an infusion of professionalism and just grit. And if you listen to Memphis players to a person, they all had his back. They all loved playing with him. They respected his work ethic. His just kind of that dog mentality that he had, and that team certainly needed it. So but we're not talking about the real fit. We're talking about what is his impact on fantasy. And there's some pluses and minuses there. I mean, last season he did take a slight step back as far as what his shooting was. It was still painful. He shot 39% from the field, which totally crushes. In 9 cat just can totally lose you that week with that kind of shooting. So it's pretty painful, but despite all of that, despite shooting 39% from the fields, he was still the 114th ranked player. Not a guy that's a long-term hold on your roster, but at 114, that's somebody that is going to be in and out of lineups most weeks. It has a lot of value there. And his value is derived mainly from hitting 2 threes a game and then his defense.
It's all true, but when I think of Dylan Brooks, all I think about is somebody who's going to get in the way of more valuable fantasy players and younger players who I'd like to see develop. So I just see him as a problem. It's just
Oh
kind of
yeah.
just a menace. Honestly, I think that this is a good time to let the people know that we're both endlessly fascinated with this Rockets rotation. It's really early on. I kind of want to come up with a projection of what I think they might do and what I think they should do and what we hope for fantasy, but someone's going to miss out. With Udoka coming over, who knows? It could be my boy Şengün. It could, Jabari Smith's a better defender. Maybe he gets annoyed at Şengün if he's not making improvements on the defensive end. Dylan Brooks, he could play him 38 minutes a game, and Tari Eason could play 16 minutes a game. They could start Tari Eason and Jabari at power forward and center and bring Şengün, who I think has all NBA talent in his DNA. They could bring him off the bench again. So, for anyone who's listening to the end of this podcast, we will be doing a Rockets deep dive in the next episode of our summer series, unless if you want to back out, Nate.
No, I have multiple Rocket guys, and so I'm excited about jumping it into the next one. I'll probably talk about Dylan Brooks further in that one.
Gotcha.
But just to wrap up the Dylan Brooks, I have him as I have this as Dylan Brooks as a Jello shot only party. You're going to the party. That's all they're serving.
Only party. That just sounds like a dive bar that like the beer taps don't work, but they made Jello shots. They're like, I'm sorry, the kegs are tapped, but I do have these blue raspberry. It's always just blue raspberry left.
Right.
Is that all Dylan Brooks has at his party?
It's gonna be pretty fun, but you might be paying for it come Sunday.
Have you ever gotten very, very drunk off Jello shots? And if so, how many did you have to eat? Because I love Jello shots, but it's a novelty. I'll get one at a bar if they have them. If you're going around with your friends, I love Jello shots. But have you ever just ripped through 11 of them?
No, I never have. I've gotten the closest thing I've done was with these, those like ices, like the little frozen popsicles in a bag.
Yeah, like Otter Pops.
Otter Pops, thank you. Yeah,
so
we did a melted one of those in a test tube with a shot of vodka, and that was the worst hangover I've ever had in my entire life. Hands down. So that's pretty close. It's like a melted Jello shot.
Speaking of the worst hangover I've ever had in my entire life, the final player on my list is John Collins, because I lied. It's a total party. Collins has top 50 upside. so I'm coming with you.
I'm gonna full around.
It's come full. I think John Collins you came around on, and who is the guy that I helped you? Kuzma. I think you're getting close on Kuzma.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. Yep.
I will remind everybody, please make sure you are following Projecting the Jump on Twitter. That's at Projecting the Jump Pod. And you can follow me as well at Quano Physics, QUANO Physics. And just keep an eye out. We got some stuff coming down the pike that we're really excited about. Nate, this has been really fun, just getting some reps with you. It wasn't my most organized process, but I had a great time. So I hope it was useful for you guys, just getting some of these player takes out early before we can actually start looking at some early ADP.
Yeah, and if anybody's still listening, and we're kind of solidifying the rest of this preseason or summer process, if there's topics that you would like to hear about, hit us up on that social media, and we'd love to dive it in. I feel like I don't think we left any meat in the bones on the Wizards, but if you feel like there was, let us know, and we'll jump back in on it too.
I'm definitely going to be bringing up Johnny Davis on our next pod. As does he actually exist? Is that an NBA?
Are we doing a G League pod too?
Well, we are gonna do a real or not real summer league pod. So you're gonna get a Rockets deep dive, a little bit of real or not real. There's some guys from summer league we got to talk about, are these guys who could be fantasy relevant, or is this just a guy to keep an eye on for dynasty, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But all right, well, that has been our very first episode of season 2, the preseason. For Natron Clean, this is your boy Flyin J. Keep an eye out for that on the next episode, and we'll talk to y'all then.
Cheers.
Peace.
Later.